Welcome to the Oil and Gas Report, brought to you by Katch. I'm your host, Rob Hislop. We have moved all our equipment out of our Edmonton-based studio and have headed over to Vancouver. We're in this city for the Globe 2012 conference. Now, in case you're not familiar with it, it's something that's actually been around for quite a while. It started back in 1990 and goes every 2 years. What it does is it brings together leaders of industry, all sorts of people from various industries, and they're talking about trying to make the world a better place. We've been fortunate enough to land a lot of interviews, corporate executives, international agencies, urban leaders, financial executives as well, government policymakers, as well as environmental industry executives. Of course, being from Alberta, we've got a lot of oil sands representation as well. And again, this is the Globe 2012 conference. It's held in March in Vancouver. The theme this year, building a sustainable economy for the 21st century. Joining us now is Gord Lambert. And Gord, you're the Vice President of Sustainable Development with Suncor. Thanks very much for being with us today.
Yeah, hi Rob, pleased to be.
So we're at this Globe 2012 and the catchphrase seems to be sustainability. Tell me what that means to you and your company.
Well, we quite simply look at our economic, our environmental and social performance as interdependent, that we can't be successful as an enterprise unless we manage all three dimensions of that performance as an interdependent whole.
Okay, so you're talking about measurements and that sort of thing. What are specifics for you?
Well, on our environmental performance, we have to earn our societal consent to operate and to grow. And of course, with oil sands particularly, it's under intense scrutiny for the environmental footprint. So a big part of our efforts on environment are driving towards solutions to things like treating tailings so that we don't need ponds, reclaiming the land that we mine in a really accelerated way, reducing our water use, reducing our energy use, and all of which drives better business performance and adds to our economic bottom line as well.
Right. Now, you were telling me off camera you've been with the company for 15 years now. A lot of people would have the impression that sustainability, the way you're talking about it and looking after the land, has not always been a first priority for oil companies.
No, I would say that. I think it's really shifting, though, from where environment was often a compliance-oriented activity, and we do have extensive regulations in the oil and gas sector, to where it's a strategic advantage. That, in other words, by driving our environmental performance well beyond what's required for compliance, actually yields a better business model, better business performance, and value for our shareholders.
So, but you are seeing where that's where it's going now. Perhaps it hasn't always been where it's been at.
Yeah, I mean, different companies will be at different states of maturity of how they build this into strategy. Certainly for Suncor, though, this has been a long-term engagement for us, and we can show that it's created value.
Right. What do you think? It seems to me that oil sands especially, quite a target these days from around the world. And, they're talking about, you're talking about reclamation, people are saying things aren't happening fast enough. I mean, how do you try to convince people that you are doing the right thing?
Well, it's got to be through our actions, so it just can't be words. It has to be true progress. So an example of that was a little over a year ago, we announced a new way of treating tailings so that we can generate dry tailings and return them to our mine almost on a real-time level. That involved canceling plans for 5 future tailings ponds. And it also means that over the next decade, we'll be cleaning up the legacy tailings so that we can reclaim more quickly. That was quite a dramatic, game-changing announcement, and we're currently spending $1 billion deploying that technology at commercial scale.
Is the whole reclaiming movement happening a lot faster now at Suncor than it would have, say, 10 years ago?
Yeah, these breakthroughs are going to start coming even faster now. And one of the reasons, which is quite an interesting development too in this conference, you'll hear the word collaboration used very extensively. And the industry's agreed now to share intellectual property around tailings technology, around water use, around land reclamation, and around greenhouse gases, and have created a new entity even to do that for the oil sands called Canada's Oil Sands Innovation Alliance. So 12 CEOs announced that publicly March 1. and it represents a global precedent for how the oil and gas industry works together on environment.
Do you feel as if the industry is being pushed along, or do you feel as though the industry is leading what environmentalists and stuff? Because environmentalists seem to be more vocal now. Of course, with social media, they're able to get their word out a lot faster. Do you feel as though that's giving you a bit of a nudge?
Oh, always. There's a push-pull, and the role of NGOs is actually to put a spotlight and criticize the status quo. Some of that's well-grounded, others it's more perception, but in any event, we have to, as companies, look at the data and look at societal expectations, not just NGOs, and respond to those changing expectations. And many industries have had to go through that. The chemical industry in the 80s had to go through a change because of air toxics, other recognition of substances causing harm, and they had to retool their processes, they had to redesign their facilities, and now you see them really moving on from that. The oil sands is a pretty young industry. Just building new tailings ponds doesn't pass the bulletin board test. Now we have to solve that problem and show that the future is not an extension of the past.
So then chemical industry was the 80s, 2000s is oil industry, time for a change. Yeah,
and oil sands probably for this next 100-year period, we're going to need to show that we can innovate, we can improve the performance, reduce our footprint, and enhance our business in doing that.
Right. Now, this obviously doesn't just hold true for oil companies, but I mean, the way it's been in the past is, I'm going to come in, make as much money as I can, damn the environment, if that's what it comes down to. So long as the shareholders are happy, we're happy. And that was very short-term thinking. That can't be the method anymore, can it?
No, and particularly this is where oil sands almost has a strength, is that the reserve size is so large. We know we're going to be operating in that region for the next 100 years. And so that means on an environmental stewardship level, on a community engagement level, we have to be there for the long haul, and we have to show that we can be good neighbors to every affected stakeholder. But it also means that investing in improvement will have long-term benefits. This isn't a 10-year oil and gas reservoir, right, that we're developing, like you were suggesting earlier. This is it's a journey that we're going to be on for the long haul, but the longevity of the resource actually helps us.
With a company like Katch, it works at developing safety measures to ensure that people working on the rigs are safer. They don't have to worry about their injuries or anything like that. They also have a zero spill technology, which ensures that things are cleaned up and it doesn't leave as big of a footprint, I guess, afterwards when it's all done. But it costs money. And so often it's difficult to show people, if you spend money today, it'll make you money down the road. How do you get the industry thinking like that, thinking if they spend a little bit more today on safety and environmental products, that it'll actually have an impact down the road?
Well, it's almost a known fact nowadays that if you take preventive action, it's substantially less costly than corrective or remedial action after the fact. In other words, what you would spend to prevent a spill is much cheaper than the cleanup costs down the line. In fact, we use for business case analysis, it's 10 times greater cost to do remedial cleanup, fix-up work than to do it right at the start. So I think Katch's an example of really thinking at that preventive level, but then really recognizing that that's much more valuable than cleaning up undesired events and after the fact.
And also the press that it could get you as well, obviously.
Well, yeah, exactly. We need to, if there's a risk that needs to be managed, better to manage it proactively.
Right. Now tell me something. Our province, Alberta, Saskatchewan, BC, you're talking about reclamation and how you're moving ahead faster with it. From what I understand, there are tens of thousands of abandoned well sites throughout this area. What happens with something like that? How do you reclaim that, or who takes care of that?
Well, no, the industry itself. So we cause those wells to have been drilled. In some cases, those are abandoned wells that are called orphan wells, where the ownership has been either lost or the company that drilled it is no longer in business. if it were a small oil and gas firm. So for those types of wells, the ERCB have an orphan well program, and the industry funds that, so that even though any one of us might not be responsible, by creating this overall fund, we can help advance the cleanup of them.
Is that something that's happening do you think it's happening at a good pace in Alberta, or not?
It could always go faster. You know, it's a case of just how much activity is going on at any given time, and where in the priority is the orphan well issue. So I think it's always under review, and there's always opportunities to improve.
Gord, thanks very much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
We've been chatting with Gord Lambert from Suncor.